Hey everybody, happy to have you here. This is Tucker with an update on your forecast. And if you've been listening lately, we've been talking about this storm right next to me. You can see it on radar, a lot of snow coming to the mid-Atlantic and some rain and even some potentially severe weather in the southeast. But this is one of a lot of storms that's going to impact us over the next week. In fact, I'm tracking beyond this one, 3 individual storms, and that's what we're jumping into in this video. We'll talk about who's going to see the snow, how much will fall, and of course, we'll give you updates that you probably aren't hearing anywhere else yet. So with that, let's talk about weather. I did want to give you a look at some of the projections on snowfall over the next 10 days, and what you're seeing here is most of the U.S., in fact, expected to see snow, and anywhere you're seeing those red colors, that indicates totals of at least a foot. So we have a strong signal, and that's why this forecast is so important, but also the potential for severe weather as soon as Wednesday, and then again next week, we're going to talk about in some of the areas that aren't seeing snow too. The first storm in our list that we're covering here is going to impact Wednesday and Thursday. Some of you may be watching this afterward towards the end of it, and if you are, just skip ahead in the video because we have several more to get into. But if not, here's what you need to look forward to. And what we're seeing is snow across much of the Midwest here. This is going to move into the interior of New England, but also keep an eye on the radar out here in the southeast. That's where we may see some severe weather that we'll show you in more detail in just a moment. But I'm going to move this forward through your Wednesday. You can see snow falling across Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, even Iowa, Wisconsin. We got Michigan in there as well. And that severe weather, that's possible in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. As we get into Thursday now, this is overnight, you're seeing this move into the northeast. Any of these pink colors you're seeing, that's going to cause some slick travel from places like Pennsylvania through southern New England. Northern New England, though, some of these mountains, these higher elevations, good snow. So that's good for ski country out there. Eventually, this moves out towards the middle of Thursday, and we see some quieting conditions. In terms of snowfall, we're expecting this to be a pretty good snow event. Anywhere you're seeing those blue colors, that's generally speaking going to be a 4 to 8 inch snowfall. You'll see that mainly here, those darker blues. And that's going to be across much of Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, southern Wisconsin into northern Illinois there. And our mountains up here on the interior of New England, that's where we may see up to a foot, if not some more snow, only in those higher elevations, but certainly there is some stuff to work with there. In terms of severe weather, we can take a look here, and this is our severe weather outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. Areas shaded in yellow are looking at a damaging wind and tornado threat. This will be mainly in the afternoon on Wednesday. The threat does not continue into Thursday, though. There's simply not enough instability for those storms to really be successful. So that's our look there with the threat for severe weather and snow. But it's just one of several storms. Let's jump into storm number 2. If you are watching closely, you may have noticed our second storm coming ashore on the west coast as we move into Thursday, and this is going to impact much of the western U.S. here Thursday and Friday, especially California. But if we move this forward in time, you'll also notice that green and yellow coloration, that turns to blue, and that's the rain changing over to snow as it hits the higher elevations, and boy, will there be a lot of snow that falls out there. And as we move into Friday, you're still seeing 2 full days of rain on the west coast, and snow continuing to fall even late on Friday into early Saturday across the higher elevations in the west. So a good snowfall out there for the Rockies and really any mountain chain for the most part. We're also able to see how much rain does fall, though, and one of the concerns is flooding here, certainly especially on our coastlines. That's where we have the flood threat on Friday. And if we look down to the LA area, that's where our threat is a bit higher just because we had the wildfires, and that makes it harder for the ground to absorb the water. But in terms of snow, we're talking about what'll be feet of snow in the mountains out here. And you can see this all the way from the Sierra Nevadas into the Rockies. Sierra Nevadas, though, we're looking at amounts that, you can see for yourself here, will be measured in feet. Those are amounts basically 4 to 6 feet. And in the rest of our mountains out here, a couple of feet of snow are likely. So it continues to be a very snowy February out there. And this storm is important because we're going to jump into it now. It also becomes our third storm as it moves back into the central U.S. and eventually the east. This takes us to the weekend where our third storm develops and may be the largest of the next several on its way. And what you're looking at is a storm here right in the central U.S. and quickly developing into what will be a very significant event for severe storms and winter weather throughout the afternoon and into the evening on Saturday. And where you have that mild air, temperatures in the 70s, and strong wind a few thousand feet up in the southeast, our severe weather threat will occur. Meanwhile, on the north side of this, we're looking at snow and ice that'll impact the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, and the Midwest. And this is going to continue into Sunday, really through the day Sunday in many spots. Still the potential for some strong storms out here on the southeastern edge of it. And on the north side, that's where we have ice and snow, especially in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast on Sunday. It eventually moves out ahead of Monday, but this could cause some pretty significant disruptions, and it's one that we're watching very closely here. What we're also looking at is the potential for snow, and what we're seeing here is snow potential not just across the Midwest, but into the Northeast as well. That said, the Midwest is the best bet for a pure snow event. The Northeast may see a lot of mixing involved, but the potential for 6+ inches of snow is definitely present across the Midwest, if not the interior of the Northeast as well. The coastal areas, that's a little more up in the air, so we're watching that closely. I want to check back for updates. Also, our severe weather threat here, as we were talking about across the Southeast, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets extended ultimately a little bit farther to the east. And part of the reason we have this severe weather threat, in case you're curious, is because we have everything necessary, all the ingredients for severe storms. This is what I look at as a meteorologist. That curved line there, that indicates the spin in the atmosphere, good for tornadoes. That gap between the white dashed line and the red line, that's your instability. It's good for damaging wind and hail as well, indicated by how cold it is higher up in the atmosphere. So everything working to make this one a powerful one. And then after it's out, I want to give you a look at some of the bigger changes that may be on the way as we get into the start of next week and really through the rest of the month. Of course, the million-dollar question, and the one I've heard more than anything so far, is how long does this pattern last? So let's talk about what changes after this week and next week. And I'm going to give you an idea of the upper level pattern. This is what we look at in meteorology to give you an idea of what's happening longer in the distance. Even when people are saying, oh, you can't predict that far out. You can't get the details right, but you certainly can. I'll show you here what we're looking at. Now, as we move through the weekend, what you're going to notice is in our upper level pattern, we have these little bubbles that are sort of mixed in, and those are our active storm systems crossing through the country. And beginning next week, you still have them there. Here's your Monday. We got a wave of energy coming in right here. It's going to cross the country. Tuesday, you're going to see one follow it up. And then it's really this one right here, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, by the way. But once we get to next weekend, we're going to fall into a more stable pattern. So this is February 23rd, 24th, 25th. This should be when our weather pattern gets a bit quieter. You can see this configuration here, that ridge in the west, the trough in the east, this trough out in the Pacific Ocean, and that's a sign that we may have some stability. Could still be some storms, but not as rapid fire as we're seeing right now. We can also get an idea of what temperatures are going to do because this is a big part of the story too. And what you're seeing are much colder than average temperatures. This is next week by the 17th. And we're talking about highs that'll be in the single digits likely across much of the central U.S. for perhaps a couple days here as the cold begins to settle in. Now as we get later into the week, this is Friday, you can still see that cold air sitting out here across much of the eastern U.S. This is relative to average, by the way, so I'm not saying it's going to be colder in the south than the Northeast, but relative to average, it is going to be quite cold, and it's going to stay that way until we can break into that more stable pattern I was talking about. And when that pattern shows up, you'll see milder weather return to the west, but it does look like a cold, well, middle and ends to February if you're in the east, especially the southeast, more typical of what we saw in January, and certainly we're going to be watching closely for any further changes as we get into March. And with that, we'll wrap up our video here. If you have any questions, you just want a personal forecast, don't be shy. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. I'm happy to answer each and every one of you. Make sure to like and subscribe and check back here. I'll be sure to keep you updated as we track this active pattern and get ready for the end of February.